The late afternoon sun burned low over Harborview's weathered docks, painting the salty air with streaks of gold and orange. Seagulls screeched, circling above the creaking wooden piers where fishing boats bobbed, and the faint hum of a naval port buzzed in the distance. I'm Marcus Caldwell, a 72-year-old Vietnam vet, and I was sitting at a wobbly table outside Joe's coffee shack, a place I've called my second home for years. My old leather jacket, patched with faded insignia from my 2 tours, hung loose on my frame, and my hands, scarred from shrapnel and a lifetime of hard work, cradled a steaming mug of black coffee. On the table sat my flip phone, a scratched-up relic from 2005. It's not much, but it works. Always has. I don't need fancy gadgets to call my grandson or check the time. I was waiting for Tommy, my 17-year-old pride and joy, to join me after his school let out. These moments with him, they're what keep me grounded. I noticed a young woman nearby, wrestling with a stroller that looked like it weighed more than she did. Her toddler was fussing, kicking up a storm, and she was frazzled, sweat beading on her forehead as she tried to balance a diaper bag and a coffee cup. Without thinking, I set my mug down and stood, my knees groaning from years of wear. "Ma'am, let me give you a hand," I said, my voice rough but warm, like gravel smoothed by a river. She looked up, startled, but nodded. I eased the stroller into a shaded spot under the cafe's awning, steadying it with one hand while I crouched, slowly, mind you, to smile at the kid. "Hey there, little trooper," I said, giving a playful salute. The toddler giggled, and the woman, Sarah, let out a relieved sigh. "Thank you, sir. You're a lifesaver," she said, her voice shaky but grateful. I waved it off and shuffled back to my seat, feeling that quiet glow you get from doing something decent. But that glow didn't last. A group of dock workers, maybe in their 20s, sprawled at a table nearby, their shiny smartphones glinting like trophies. One of them, a lanky guy with a smirk I wanted to wipe off, spotted my phone. "Holy hell, look at that dinosaur!" he called out, loud enough for the whole patio to hear. His buddies laughed, heads thrown back like they'd just heard the joke of the century. "Hey, old man, you borrowing that from a museum or what?" he said, his voice dripping with mockery. His name was Derek. I caught it from his work badge, and he leaned forward, eyes gleaming with cruelty. "Bet you don't even know how to text. Why don't you join the 21st century, Grandpa?" My stomach twisted, but I kept my face steady, fingers brushing the phone's worn edges. "It gets the job done," I said, low and calm, though my blood was simmering. I've faced worse, enemy fire in Da Nang, mortar shells screaming overhead. But this public shaming right here in my town, surrounded by folks half my age, it stung like a fresh wound. The other patrons glanced over, some chuckling, others pretending not to notice. Sarah, the woman I'd helped, frowned but stayed quiet, her eyes darting nervously. I couldn't blame her. She had a kid to protect. But the laughter from Derek's crew grew louder, each jab like a needle in my pride. "What's next, you gonna pull out a telegraph?" Derek sneered, and his friends howled. I took a slow sip of my coffee, trying to drown the noise, but then a police cruiser rolled up, its tires crunching on the gravel lot. 2 officers stepped out, their boots heavy on the pavement. The older one, Hargrove, had a face like a bulldog, all jowls and suspicion. The younger Ruiz looked less certain, his eyes flicking over the scene. Derek, emboldened, pointed at me. "That's the guy, officers. Probably up to no good with that ancient phone. Who even uses those anymore?" My heart sank. I hadn't done a damn thing wrong, but here I was, targeted for nothing more than existing. Hargrove strode over, his hand resting on his belt. "Sir, we got a call about a disturbance. Mind telling us what you're doing here?" "Just having coffee, waiting for my grandson," I said, keeping my voice even, though it felt like swallowing glass. Hargrove's eyes narrowed, lingering on my phone and jacket like they were evidence of a crime. "Let's see some ID," he said, his tone sharp. Ruiz hesitated, his gaze catching the purple heart pin on my jacket, but he didn't speak. The dock workers snickered, feeding off the tension like vultures. I handed over my ID, my hands steady despite the anger boiling inside. I'd survived jungles, carried bleeding men to safety, and now I was being treated like a suspect over a damn phone. Inside, I was a mess. Had I been naive to think a small act of kindness wouldn't draw attention? Was my age, my choice to live simply, a crime in their eyes? The weight of their judgment pressed down, heavy as the shrapnel scar on my leg. But as I met Hargrove's stare, something hardened in me. I'd faced worse than this, and I wasn't about to let a smug cop or a loudmouth punk break me. Not today. The air in Joe's coffee shack turned thick like the humid jungles I trudged through in '68. I'm Marcus Caldwell, 72 years old, a Vietnam vet with a Purple Heart pinned to my chest and a lifetime of scars to prove it. I sat there, my coffee cooling, my old flip phone sitting like a guilty verdict on the table. Officer Hargrove, with his bulldog scowl, was still clutching my ID, his eyes boring into me like I was some street punk instead of a man who'd carried wounded boys through gunfire. His partner, Ruiz, younger and less sure, kept glancing at my jacket's service patches, but he stayed quiet. The dock workers, led by that smug, loudmouth Derek, were having a field day, their laughter sharp as shrapnel. "Look at him clutching that relic," Derek jeered, loud enough for the whole patio to hear. "Bet he's still writing letters with a quill pen." His crew roared, their voices a chorus of cruelty that made my blood simmer. I kept my hands steady, but inside I was a storm. Anger, shame, and a stubborn refusal to let these fools define me. I'd faced ambushes, seen friends fall, and now I was being humiliated in my own town for daring to exist with an old phone. The other patrons were no help. Some stared with pity, others looked away, their silence louder than Derek's taunts. Sarah, the woman I'd helped with her stroller, gripped her coffee cup, her face tight with unease. I didn't expect her to jump in. She had her kid to think about. But the weight of it all, the jeers, the cops' suspicion, pressed down like the old wound in my leg that throbs when a storm's coming. Then the door swung open, and in strode Tommy, my grandson, all 17 years of fire and heart. His backpack hung off one shoulder, his face bright until he saw the scene. Me, cornered by a cop and a pack of hyenas in work boots. "Grandpa Marcus!" he called, his voice sharp with worry. He marched over, eyes blazing. "What the hell's going on? He's just having coffee." Hargrove barely glanced at him, waving a hand like swatting a fly. "Stay out of this, kid. We're handling it." Tommy's fists clenched, and I could see the fight in him. My fight, passed down through blood. I laid a hand on his arm, firm but calm. "Easy, son," I said, though my own heart was pounding. I wouldn't let him get dragged into this mess, but damn, it hurt to see him witness this. Derek, smelling blood, leaned in closer, his smirk wider. "Ah, look, the old man's got a kid to fight his battles now. That phone older than you, kid?" His buddies cackled, and Hargrove's lips twitched like he was enjoying the show. My jaw tightened. I've stared down enemy soldiers, carried dying men through mud, but this, being mocked in front of Tommy, my own flesh and blood, it was a knife to the gut. I wanted to stand, to tell Derek exactly what I thought of his cowardice, but I held back. Discipline, forged in war, kept me steady. "Ignore them," I told Tommy, my voice low, though every word felt like swallowing glass. Then Sarah stepped up, her voice shaking but fierce. "This man helped me when no one else did," she said, glaring at Derek. "He's a good person. You should be ashamed." Her words cut through the noise, and a few patrons nodded, their murmurs like a spark in dry grass. A barista, Mia, a college kid with a nose ring and a fire in her eyes, whipped out her phone and started recording. "This isn't right," she muttered, her thumbs flying as she live-streamed to her small social media following. The camera caught it all. Hargrove's scowl, Derek's sneer, and me, sitting tall despite the weight of their judgment. I didn't know it then, but that video was about to change everything. Outside, the port was alive, the hum of cranes and shouts of workers mixing with the distant wail of ship horns. A group of veterans, guys I'd shared stories with at the docks, spotted the commotion through the cafe's windows. Joe, a wiry Desert Storm vet with a limp and a steel spine, recognized my jacket. "That's Caldwell," he growled, his voice tight. "He's one of us." Joe and his crew, 5 weathered men who'd seen their own battles, started making calls, their voices urgent as they dialed up a local veterans advocacy group. "Marcus is in trouble," Joe said, his phone pressed to his ear. "We need backup." Word spread fast, like wildfire through the tight-knit veteran community, each call a ripple that would soon become a wave. Back inside, Hargrove tossed my ID back like it was trash. "No record, but you're causing a scene," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Maybe you should move along." I met his eyes, unyielding. "I'm not breaking any laws, officer. I'm here for coffee." My voice was steady, but inside I was wrestling with doubt. Had I been naive to think I could just live my life, help a stranger, and not be targeted? Was my age, my old phone, an invitation for this? Tommy's fists were still clenched, his eyes darting between me and Hargrove. I kept a hand on his arm, anchoring him, but then one of Derek's buddies tossed a crumpled napkin at our table. It landed by my coffee, a small act that felt like a slap. My eyes darkened, but I didn't move. I'd learned long ago to pick my battles, and this one wasn't over yet. Mia's livestream was picking up steam, comments flooding in. "This is disgusting. He's a veteran. Show some respect. Why are the cops harassing him?" I didn't know it, but the video was spreading to local news outlets, who were already sniffing around the port for a story about the incoming naval squadron. The tension in the cafe was a powder keg, and I could feel it. Something was about to give. I sat there, my coffee cold, my heart heavy, but my resolve unbroken. I'd survived worse than this, and I wasn't about to let them win. Officer Hargrove, his bulldog face set in a scowl, loomed over me, his voice sharp as a bayonet. "Last chance, sir. Leave now or we're escorting you out." My grandson Tommy, 17 and all fire, was trembling with rage beside me, his fists balled tight. I kept a hand on his arm, steadying him, but my own blood was boiling. I'd faced down enemies in Da Nang, carried bleeding men through mud, and now I was being treated like a vagrant in my own town. For what? Helping a mom with a stroller and owning a phone that didn't glow like a damn Christmas tree? I met Hargrove's eyes, my voice low but iron hard. "I'm not breaking any laws, officer. I've earned my place here, same as you." The dock workers, led by that coward Derek, were still smirking, though their laughter had dimmed under the weight of the moment. Derek leaned back, arms crossed, muttering, "Old man's gonna cry now." His buddies chuckled, but it was weaker, like they sensed the tide shifting. Sarah, the woman I'd helped, clutched her toddler's stroller, her eyes blazing with indignation but fear holding her back. The other patrons were a mixed bag, some gawking, some whispering, but most too spineless to speak up. Mia, the barista with the nose ring, was still live streaming, her phone steady as she captured every second of this farce. I didn't know it, but her video was blowing up online, comments pouring in. "This is shameful. Respect our vets. Why's the cop harassing him?" The port outside hummed with life, cranes groaning, waves slapping the docks. But inside it felt like a battlefield, and I was holding the line. Then, 8 minutes after this mess started, the world shifted. The distant wail of ship horns cut through the air, loud and proud, as a naval squadron steamed into Harborview's port. Their decks gleamed under the setting sun, flags snapping in the breeze, a ceremonial return that drew crowds to the docks. But inside the cafe, the real battle was peaking. Before Hargrove could make good on his threat, the door slammed open and in stormed Joe, a Desert Storm vet with a limp and a voice like a drill sergeant. Behind him were 5 other veterans, their faces weathered but fierce, their jackets heavy with service pins. Joe's eyes locked on me, then Hargrove. "This man," he bellowed, pointing at me, "is a decorated hero. He saved lives in Vietnam, and you're treating him like a criminal." The room went dead silent, Derek's smirk vanishing like smoke. The crowd parted, and Joe's crew fanned out, their presence a wall of solidarity. Sarah found her voice again, stepping forward with her toddler in her arms. "He helped me today when no one else did," she said, her voice trembling but clear, her eyes locked on Derek. "He's a good man. You should be ashamed." Her words were a spark, igniting murmurs of agreement from the crowd. Mia's live stream caught it all, the comments now a flood. "Hell yeah, stand up for him. This is what a hero looks like." Outside, the docks were chaos, onlookers drawn by the squadron's arrival, news vans screeching in, their cameras swiveling toward the cafe. A woman's voice boomed through a megaphone. "We stand with Marcus Caldwell." It was Linda, head of the local veterans advocacy group, her face fierce as she rallied a growing crowd. "This ends now!" she shouted, and the docks erupted in cheers. Officer Ruiz, who'd been quiet, finally spoke, his voice cutting through the tension. "Hargrove, we need to check that call again. This doesn't add up." Hargrove froze, his authority cracking like thin ice. The naval squadron's crews, many of them veterans, were disembarking, drawn by the commotion. A young sailor, her uniform crisp, pushed through the crowd, her eyes wide as she spotted my jacket. "Sir," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "my dad served with you in '69. He said you saved his platoon." My throat tightened, memories of blood and brotherhood flooding back. I managed a nod, my heart swelling despite the ache. Derek tried to slink away, his bravado gone, but Joe stepped in his path, his voice low and searing. "You mocked a man who fought for this country. Think about that." Derek stammered, his face pale, and his buddies scattered, their laughter replaced by shame. Hargrove, now cornered by the crowd and cameras, muttered, Just doing our job, sir. It was a weak apology, and I didn't buy it. Ruiz, though, stepped forward, extending a hand. Thank you for your service, Mr. Caldwell. This was a mistake. I shook his hand, my grip firm. Mistakes happen, I said, my voice steady but laced with pain. Respect shouldn't be one of them. Tommy threw his arms around me, tears in his eyes, and the crowd exploded in applause. Linda's megaphone carried one last message. Veterans deserve better. We won't let this happen again. The live stream was trending nationwide now, news anchors picking up the story as the squadron's horns echoed across the port. A group of sailors saluted me, their hands crisp against their brows, and I felt a weight lift. Not all of it, but enough. Derek was gone, slinking into the crowd, his head low, the weight of his actions sinking in like a stone. In the days that followed, Harborview changed. The coffee shop issued a public apology, vowing to train staff on respect. The police department, under pressure from the viral video, launched a review of bias in their ranks. I kept my old phone, a badge of my stubborn pride, and Tommy? He stood taller, his faith in me unshaken. The community rallied, veterans, families, even strangers who'd seen the video, organizing to demand better for those who'd served. I'd turned pain into a spark, and that spark was now a fire. I'd fought for my country once, and today I'd fought for my dignity, and I wasn't done.